it is John Fortune here with this week's weekly forecast for the 24th to 28th of April 2017. Starting with the US dollar index, we'll run through a number of pairs, taking a look at key levels of support and resistance in the process. So I hope you all had a great weekend. Let's dive into the charts and see where the money is this week. US dollar index. You can see here that it's in a downtrend and we are actually making lower lows. We broke down below this key level of support and resistance at 12,254. This is on the FXCM charts. And we did get a pullback to that support and resistance level and a retest. I am now expecting further declines this week in the US dollar index. I am expecting US dollar weakness this week. And I see this potentially coming down to the lower support and resistance level here at 12,121, highlighted by the blue box. And I also see downward sloping, potential downward sloping confluence here with this trend line in around this area. Now, if this comes down quite quickly, we may see a bounce on this downward sloping trend line and then a move back up, maybe even to the 12,200 level before coming down to complete the move to the 12,121 area, if this is where it's heading. Euro US dollar is the next pair that we're going to look at. Euro US dollar. You can see here that Euro US dollar bounced on the trend line over in this area, and it broke up through the 1.0664 support and resistance level here, and the highlighted by the blue box. It did actually go all the way up to the higher support and resistance level here at the 1.0773 without making a pullback to this previous support and resistance level here. So I am now expecting this to pull back into this support area, and I'm looking for a bounce from this area up to previous high up here and the 1.0773 resistance level, and I am actually expecting this to potentially break through all the way up to the 1.0826 level. So I'll be looking for a potential bounce at the support level here in the 1.0664 level for moves higher in this pair. Next pair we're going to look at is US dollar Japanese yen. US dollar Japanese yen is also trending down. As you can see, we have a continuation pattern here, an accumulation zone. It started to accumulate just above the 110.07 level, and then it broke through the 110.07 level, and it found support on this downward sloping trend line here, as you can see. I am now looking for this to come down to the 107.47 resistance level, as highlighted by this blue box. However, we may see a pullback into the 110.07 area, this kind of area, and this highlighted blue box up here, before we see a move down into the 107.47. This is the move I'm looking for next week. I will not be trading the move up, but I will be looking for the sell from this resistance level up here, or if it doesn't pull back to the resistance level and we do get a trend change or a reversal pattern in the lower time frames, I'll be looking to take this down to the 10747 area, and I'll be bearing in mind this downward sloping trend line as possible support before we get to that area as well. Next pair I'd like to look at is the pound US dollar. Now the pound US dollar was in a triangle formation, as you can see here. It did break out of this triangle formation, plus it broke above the 1.261 resistance level, which we are now looking to potentially become support and a pullback to this previous broken trend line, downward sloping trend line here as well. Now, we are finding accumulation, and it did break above the 1.2800 area, and it is accumulating above this resistance level here, which it is now support level, as it broke and it pulled back to it. So there is a chance that we won't see a pullback into the 1.2610 area down here, and instead we may just get a continuation of this move straight into the 1.298 resistance zone. I am looking for the 1.300 level to be a fairly important level in the pound US dollar next week, so I will be looking to take a trade into this area and I'll be looking for longs up to the 1.300 level next week on the pound US dollar. The next pair I'd like to look at is the US dollar franc. Now the US dollar franc again is making lower lows, as we can see here. It is in this kind of wedge pattern denoted by these trend lines here, and within that you can see the horizontal support and resistance levels, and it did actually break down below the 1.0014 level. Now I am expecting this to pull back potentially and retest this 1.0014 level, potentially also this downward sloping trend line. So you can see this area, there is an area of confluence of those two resistance points here. If we do get a pullback into this area, I'll be looking to take this trade down to the 0.900 level, or even further to the 0.9881 level for a potential move all the way down to this highlighted box here. Again, if it doesn't pull back into this resistance area over here and it just moves down from here, we will be looking to take a trade on the lower time frames in this direction. However, we won't take the trade up to the 1.0014 level if this pullback occurs first. Next pair I'd like to look at is the Aussie US dollar. Now the Aussie US dollar, as you can see if I zoom out a little bit here, is in a very big range, denoted by the green horizontal support and resistance level up here, resistance level in this case, and the green support level down here. And as you can see, price came in, it bounced off of this resistance level, came down to this support level and bounced here, came up to this resistance level, it retested it a number of times before coming back down to this range bottom here and this support at the 71620 level. It came back up to the 0.7730 level and this area up here, and I am now expecting this to potentially be coming back down to the range bottom at 71620. However, we are looking for US dollar weakness, so that would not fit in quite with the decline in US dollar index. So what we're looking for specifically next week is that it may not be coming back down to the 0.7162 level, and instead you can see it has also been ranging within the range between these two support and resistance levels here. Now it did come back down to the 0.749 area, and we got a bounce from here, and it has bounced up from here. It started to break out of this downward sloping trend line, and it came back and retested the 0.7493 area again here. So I will be looking for potential moves back up to the 0.7586 area, which is highlighted by this blue box here. And if we get a break above this area and a break above the highs over here, I'll be looking for a pullback and a potential move back to the major range top at 0.7730. So those are the long trades that I'm potentially looking for this week. The key areas of resistance here are the 0.586 level. And then if we get a break through this level, we'll be looking up to the 0.7730 level up here. Now, of course, if we get a breakdown below the 0.7493 level, which is here, I'll be looking for a retest of this trend line and a breakthrough this trend line. I'd be looking for a 0.7331 area of support down here. Next pair I'd like to look at is the US dollar CAD. Now, we are expecting a US dollar weakness next week. However, everything here is setting up for a potential buy in the US dollar CAD. It does mean that the CAD is probably just going to be weaker than the dollar next week. You can see price bounced from the 1.3264 level over here. It broke out of this downward sloping trend line here, and now it is hanging midway between the downward sloping trend line and the 1.3582 area. So next week we'll be looking for a pullback to retest this downward sloping trend line before move higher up into the 1.382 area, and this could be a potential opportunity for next week if it plays out as it looks to be potentially setting up at the moment. So again, we're looking for a pullback to retest this downward sloping trend line around the 1.341 area, and I'll be looking for a buy. I'll be looking to take longs into the 1.3582 resistance level, which is just here highlighted by the blue box. The next pair I'd like to look at is New Zealand US dollar. Now the New Zealand US dollar, you can see it has been bouncing around in this kind of corrective structure for a while now. Last week we did get a break above this downward sloping trend line here. As you can see, this trend line and this trend line here puts this in a wedge type formation. However, we did get the breakout of the downward sloping trend line here, and we did also get a break above the 0.6970. That's 0.6970 level. It came through, it did break through here, but it failed to stay below it, and it actually reversed, and it's now starting to trade back above this area. So I am looking for a move up to this resistance level here at the 0.7087 area, and I am actually looking for a potential move even higher to the 0.7132 area, which is this highlighted blue box here. So what I'm looking for next week is a potential pullback into this 0.6970 area. I'm looking for it to retest this area before potential moves higher to the 0.7087 area, and even higher to this trend line up here potentially, but especially to the 0.7132 area, which is this resistance area here. The next pair that I would like to look at is the Euro Yen. Now, the Euro Yen, you can see it's broken out of this downward slope, this upward sloping trend line here. It was in a kind of wedge formation as well, but it did start to break out recently to the downside. It bounced on this support area of 115.50, so that's the support area of 115.50, and it did bounce back up to this downward sloping trend line here. Now the question really is, I mean, I am looking potentially for a pullback to the 118.46 area, which is this blue area of resistance up here. However, we do have to pay attention to this trend line here, and we have to pay attention to this downward sloping trend line here. Both of these could hold price and turn it to the downside before we actually get a pullback into the resistance area of 11846. So the pullback to the resistance area of 1118.46, which is here, that may not occur due to these trend lines acting as resistance. If we do get a bounce from these trend lines, or if we get a move up into the 118.46 area up here, I am going to be looking to sell this pair down to at least a retest of the 115.50 area, which is down here, and I will be looking also for a break below this area at some point, and potentially a pullback to retest the area before I move down to the 113.84 level, and you can see it might even go through this level and test this downward sloping trend line down here. But either way, I am looking for a potential sell opportunity next week on the Euro Yen, and you can see the key area of resistance is this trend line and this trend line where it's sitting right now, so it could come down from here. However, if it does start to break higher past these trend lines, I'll be looking for a possible resistance level from the 118.46, which is this area over here. So that's what I'm looking at next week potentially for the Euro Japanese Yen. Next pair I'd like to look at is the Pound Yen. Now the Pound Yen, as you can see, was very, very corrective for a while here, and price was starting to get squeezed quite tightly. You can see between these two trend lines here. It did come down and it tested this trend line here, and it actually bounced. It reversed back up above the 137.43 resistance area, and it also broke this downward sloping trend line here. This is a very promising setup for next week and even potentially a few weeks after. As you can see, I am looking for, let me zoom in. I am looking now for a retracement potentially back to this downward sloping trend line, or maybe even through to the previous resistance level, which was broken, so looking for it to become support, and maybe a retest of this upward sloping trend line as well. So there is a nice area of confluence around here, where you've got the downward sloping trend line, the upward sloping trend line, and the 137.43 support area. So I'm looking for a pullback into this area, and I'll be looking for moves up to the 142.50 level, which is here, and even higher, potentially to the 144.062 area, which is up here. So I see this as potentially being a very, very good opportunity, if not for next week, maybe the weeks after, but certainly in the coming month or months, I see us being able to make some, to take some good opportunities on this pair to the long side. The next pair I want to look at is pound franc. Now pound franc, like all of the other pound pairs, we're looking for a long on this pair. You can see it did break above. It's in a wedge pattern, a corrective wedge pattern, as you can see by this upward sloping trend line here and this downward sloping trend line here. It did break above this key area of resistance, which is around the 1.266 area, and I am looking for this broken resistance level to become support. You can see prices starting to accumulate, so I do wonder if they will come back and test this, but if they do not come back and test this, we'll still be looking for a trade into the resistance area of 1.2905. That's 1.2905, which is this blue box here, and you can see also it's got confluence of this pretty major downward sloping trend line. You've got 1, 2, and we'll be looking for this pair to trade into this resistance area next week. The next pair that I would like to look at is the Euro Australian dollar. Now the Euro Aussie dollar, as you can see, it has been marked by this major downward sloping trend line. It has actually now started to break out of this downward sloping trend line. So in the longer term, I am actually looking for it to come to the outer trend line, which is connected here and here. So I am looking for this kind of area up here in the longer term. However, if this manages to stay above this downward sloping trend line, you can see also it's broken above the resistance area, which was holding as resistance here, here, and here. It's broken above this key resistance level, and it has now pulled back to the downward sloping trend line and this area, which has now gone from a resistance area to a support area. So I am looking for potential longs in the EurOsd next week, and you can see this area is around the 1.4200 level. So around this area here, I am looking for longs potentially up to the 1.4500 level and even higher to the 1.4656 level or area, because these are not exact specific levels, but I'm looking for this potential resistance zone to be a target in the coming weeks. So next pair I'd like to look at is EurCad. Now the EurCad, fairly similar to the EurOsd, you can see you've got a downward sloping trend line, which I'm looking to act as resistance. You've also got confluence of this horizontal resistance area at 1.4816. And just like the EurOsd, we have seen a breakout to the upside. We had, I mean, you could draw on a downward sloping trend line here, and as you can see, it would have broken out. It actually came down below this support level here, 1.41700, and it reversed and traded back above this level and the resistance level of 1.4305. So what I'm looking for now is I'm looking for a pullback into this 1.4305 area, which was an area of resistance, and I'm looking for this to change and become an area of support before we look for higher moves in the EurCad. I am looking to take the EurCad potentially up to the 1.4816 area, which is a confluence of horizontal resistance area plus the downward sloping trend line, which goes all the way back to the 12th of the 1st, 2016. So this is the potential move that I'm looking at in the EurCad. If it starts to break down below this support level, I'll be looking for the support level to the downside, and if it breaks below both of these support levels, I'll be looking to take this down to the a retest of this upward sloping trend line. But for the time being, I actually see this. I have a long bias on this EurCad pair, and this area up here, 1.4816, is where I'm looking for. Next pair I'd like to look at is Aussie Japanese Yen. Aussie Japanese Yen, as you can see, let me just put this back, realign this properly. We do have a upward sloping trend line from here, and this upward sloping trend line and this downward sloping trend line again puts this currency pair into a kind of wedge pattern. Now, as you can see, we got a breakdown below this support level at 83.826, which is this highlighted blue box here. It came down, it actually came down to the area of support of 81.459, and also area of support for this upward sloping trend line. So I am looking for potential bounce now in the Aussie Japanese Yen next week, and I am looking for a move back up to the 83 level, which is here. But I'm looking for a potential move all the way up to the 83.82 area, which is this previous broken support level, which I anticipate could become in resistance next week or in the coming weeks. So I have a long bias on the Aussie Japanese Yen. I'm looking for a bounce from these two, from this confluence of the two support levels here. The next pair I'd like to look at is the Cad Yen. Now, as we saw earlier, we're looking for US dollar weakness next week, and when we looked at the CAD, US dollar CAD pair, we were looking at a potential setup to the upside. So we should see some weakness in the Canadian dollar next week. As you can see, it broke through the 82.03 support level here. It is in a downtrend, and you can see that it's making lower lows. Plus, we have this downward sloping trend line here. So what we're looking for now is a pullback to the downward sloping trend line area and the previous broken support level, which we're looking to become resistance area, which is at 82.03, and I'm looking for a pullback in or near this area before further moves down, potentially looking for the 79.48, which is a key support zone here. I'm not going to be looking for higher areas of resistance until we get a breakout to the upside and this thing starts trending up, and it would have to break out of this trend line at the very least before I would start looking for potential buys on this pair up to this point. So the trade I'm looking for next week in this is a sell. I am expecting a little pullback first, and then hopefully we may get a nice move down to the 79.48 level. That is what I'll be looking at on this pair. That is an area of interest for me on this pair next week. The next pair I'd like to look at is the New Zealand Japanese Yen. Now, the New Zealand Japanese Yen, as you can see, it was in a wedge pattern here. We've got this upward sloping trend line, this downward sloping trend line. It did actually break. It came down, found a little bit of support on the 77.44 area. Plus, this upward sloping trend line did provide a little support for 1, 2, 3, about 4 days. And then it turned and it broke through this upward sloping trend line, as well as this area of support at 77.44. You can see it actually accumulated underneath this area of support, which then became resistance, and it retested it at least once, twice, maybe 3 days before dropping down to this area of support at 76.059. Now, we may be looking at a pullback back to retest the 77.44 area. I am looking for this to come down and make further declines at some point, but the trade we could be looking at is a bounce from this support level back up to retest the 77.44, especially if we're seeing some really strong New Zealand movement next week. Then this may be a trade back up to this level. But just remember, guys, this is counter trend, so ideally what we want to look for here is a break below this support level, a retest of it, and then the trade down to the 73.77 area is really the next nice trading with the trend trade that I'm looking for in this pair. But just note, we may get a move up to the 77.44 area, and I will be looking, if we do get a move back up to that area and also back up to the area near this downward sloping trend line, I'll be looking for a sell back down to retest this support zone, and I'll be looking for this to hopefully break through, accumulate underneath it, and then looking for another position or another trade down to the 73.77 area of support. The next trade I'd like to look at is on the pound Cad pair. Again, like the other pound pairs, is to the upside. You can see it starting to do this channel here, and it did break through last week the 1.687 area of resistance. This was on the snap election called by Theresa May. It is quite a strong move, so whether it will come all the way back down to retest this area of support here is hard to say. It may just head higher from here. If it does head higher from here, we are looking at the top of this channel line here and a confluence of this horizontal resistance area, which is the 1.750 area. It's the 1.750 area. And ultimately, I am looking for a break higher and a test of the top of the channel line here as well. And this is the 1.7729 area, around this area here. So we may just get a trade up to the 1.7504 area next week. However, if price doesn't pull back and it does trade straight into this resistance area, I would expect a potential pullback, maybe even all the way back down to the bottom of the channel, and also the 1.6871 support area before potential moves higher. If it breaks above this resistance area and it starts to accumulate above this resistance area and this upward sloping channel line, then I will be looking for the move back up into this area, as we just discussed, in the 1.7729 area of price. And that's what I'm seeing on the pound CAD. The next pair I'd like to look at is the CAD Franc. Now again, with CAD weakness next week, CAD Franc looks like it could provide a nice opportunity. You can see that it did actually break down below this area of support, which is 0.7449. Now I am expecting a pullback into the 0.7449 area, and I will be looking for a move down to this area of support, which is 0.7303. So just to reiterate, I'm looking for a pullback early next week, hopefully in the CAD Franc, to the 0.7449 resistance area, which is broken support, which we anticipate to become resistance. And I am looking for a bounce from this point, potentially down to the 0.7303, which is the next key area of support on this pair. If it does break this 0.7303 area, I'll be looking for it to turn into a resistance area, and I'll be looking for a move down to the upward sloping trend line, as you can see, denoted by this point here and this point here. And you can see the light blue ellipse here that I'll be looking for if we do get a breakdown past the 0.730 level. The next chart I'd like to look at is gold. Now, gold is setting up potentially for either way next week. We are looking for US dollar weakness, which would suggest move to the upside in gold. However, we may get a bounce off of this trend line. As you can see, it's connected from this point over here, this point over here. And as it started to accumulate, it has actually slightly bounced from this level. Whether there will be enough sellers to drive this down to the 1.260.99 area of support, that will be another question. We'll just have to wait and see. But if we do get a setup on the lower time frames, I will be looking to take a trade down to the 1.260.99 area of support, which is his previous high over here. You can see it's been tested over here. You can see over here it's been tested on a bounce here, it's been tested on a bounce here, you've got these touches here. So it's quite a well-defined area of support. And if we do get a pullback to this 1.260.99 area of support, and we start to see the US dollar index moving to the downside, then I will be looking for a bounce potentially through this trend line, and all the way up to the 1.335.90 level, which is the next key area of resistance on gold. I'm not saying this could all happen next week, but that will be potentially in the coming month or months if we do get a breakout of this trend line. And the last chart that I want to look at is silver. So as you can see, we actually have already got the breakout of this downward sloping trend line in silver. We've got an upward sloping trend line here, which did put this in a kind of a wedge pattern. We got a breakout not only of this downward sloping trend line, but of this area of resistance as price came down, and then it came up and it came to this resistance area at 17.68. It blasted pretty much straight through this area of resistance. There wasn't much resistance there, to be honest. But as you can see, this is quite well defined as a level of resistance. You can see it came down, acted as support here, came back up and acted as resistance here and here. And you can see it came down, acted as support here. So it's quite a well-defined level. However, it wasn't. It didn't provide much resistance on this move to the upside. It moved through this area of resistance, so I would be expecting this to potentially become an area of support, which is this 17. That's the 17.68 area. However, what I'm seeing next week is a potential pullback to retest the 18. That's 18.36 area of resistance, and we may get a retest and then a move down to the 17.68 area of support. I am expecting, like I said multiple times through this, that I am looking for US dollar weakness. So the trade that I will also be looking for is a pullback to the 17.683 area of support. If it does come into this area of support and we get a nice setup, then I'm going to be looking to take this trade back up to this resistance area of 18.36. And then if we get a break above this resistance area, I'll be looking for a pullback and potentially a move up to the 19.21 area, which is the next key level of resistance in silver. Well, that's it from me for this week. I hope you enjoyed this video. I hope you found it helpful. If you did, please let me know by liking, sharing and subscribing. I hope you all have a fantastic week next week. I hope you'll have a very profitable week next week. Take care and good luck, guys.